Well, hello and welcome today. Hopefully we are having a good Thursday here. Um, and so before we dig into our task here of analyzing and looking at Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler, I do want to take a moment here to kind of reflect a little bit on what had happened yesterday. And I suppose as a social studies teacher, we talk about the civic process and the times, and yesterday was definitely a challenging moment to our process. And so, yesterday in class, I said it was an important day for us in that Congress was going to do a procedural thing of certifying electoral votes, and both chambers were going to meet together and discuss them. And if there are issues with those votes, and there were issues in regards to Arizona and Pennsylvania that was brought up, and they discussed it. While they were discussing the Arizona dispute, it was disrupted and halted by protest. And we know that that protest was not peaceful, but it was violent protest. Other people may use different words, but we had a violent protest. And actually, the protest spilled into the Capitol building. The protesters had broken into the building and were able to occupy for a little while the U.S. Capitol. I would say probably historic, if we look back on that, we've never had that type of activity in the U.S. Capitol building. Perhaps has to go all the way back to the War of 1812. So that's a long time when we look at that. But it did temporarily stop the process. And our lawmakers and the staff need to find a safe place. But later in the evening, the process did go on, and they discussed Arizona and Pennsylvania. And at the end, they this morning certified the electoral votes. And so we could say our democratic process did survive the test. Did survive the test. Now we know protest. It's in our DNA. As a nation, we do respect the right to protest, but we always talk about peaceful protest. And our nation's capital has seen its share of protests. Heck, in the past 12 months, we've seen our share of protests. And some of it has been violent. So with that, I'm going to open up the floor here to if anyone wants to share their thoughts about how you felt from seeing some of those images of what was taking place in Washington, D.C. and in the nation's capital and inside the building itself. Because we process it differently. I want to open up the floor, let people have an opportunity to share some thoughts here, and just be careful and sensitive in how we express it. You can also put it in the chat if you don't feel like unmuting. So, and I know sometimes it's, we may be disconnected from it as well, and that's very well possible. We might tend to say, like, that you might be like apolitical. It doesn't, you're not interested in the politics piece of it. And that's your prerogative as well. But again, we all have the different ranges of emotions, and yesterday, as I channel surfed, I could definitely see as people are being interviewed on different channels. I looked at your mainstream media, and then also the other outlets as well. And the range of thoughts and opinions had been shared out there. Okay, definitely when you think about the events that we've had to endure in this last, especially in this last past year, it can be very exhausting. And definitely, we look though at we always sometimes find ourselves in these moments where there are some trying times. Definitely in the 21st century, we've had some trying times, but we find a way to navigate through it. And hopefully the key here is in the next few days and weeks that we learn a little bit of what happened and how to fix and how to find a way to move forward. And perhaps there's probably going to be some consequences too for those who engaged in what they did. Okay. I agree with the mentally draining and to watch, in that I'm a political junkie. And yesterday, after got done with the teaching piece of it, I had in the background here on my laptop, listening to the discussions going on in Congress, hearing Senator Cruz talk about Arizona, and then Senator Klobuchar, Minnesota, countering him, and then all of a sudden it's being broken up by the events that were happening, and I got glued to it. But then I realized, boy, I need to have a break. I need to have a break of it, and try to just do something different. I did find myself coming back to it though, and trying to put things into perspective with it, but it can be mentally exhausting. I do encourage you though, if you can watch how our U.S. representatives and U.S. senators later in the evening, when they got back together to talk about the certification process, listen to their speeches, and I think you'll be amazed at how they were very resilient and how they responded to what happened at that moment, and also understanding the importance of what they were doing with the certification. It does give you a little feeling that democracy that we know it is going to be able to move forward here. All right. Anyone else have any thoughts? Want to unmute? Go ahead, or put into the chat. When I think of what some other students may have said in previous hours, it was about how protesters were being treated, comparing the protesters of yesterday with protesters of perhaps, say, like Black Lives Matter. They had questioned different types of treatment of the protesters, and that was an issue that was also brought up in a number of news outlets as well. So that feeling is there. There was also, someone had mentioned about the idea of the 25th Amendment. And again, these moments in times get us to reflect on what actually makes up our Constitution, what is actually in there, how the process works. And the 25th Amendment is it's an amendment that's about as old as me. So it's about 53 years old, I think, coming out in about 67, 68. And it's a result of the death of President Kennedy. And it was really kind of tighten up order of succession. What happens to a president when they die in office, or they resign, or they become incapacitated, what to do. And there are 4 articles of Amendment 25. And Article 1 is if the president dies in office or resigns, the vice president takes over. We've used that one when Richard Nixon resigned. The second article in it was about filling the void if a vice president leaves office in some way. And we've used that one, Gerald Ford, becomes appointed. Richard Nixon appoints him. So Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford are really a part of Articles 1 and 2 of Amendment 25. And then Article 3 is about if a president becomes incapacitated, power is temporarily given over to the vice president until the president is deemed healthy enough to take over. And that's been used as well. Whenever a president has a medical procedure and they have to go under sedation, the power transfers to the vice president. So like Ronald Reagan, when he's had his surgeries and recovering from his assassination attempt, those things. But Article 4 is the one that's being thrown out in the media, and where the vice president and the cabinet discuss whether or not the president is capable of fulfilling his duties. And so that's been thrown out there, and I don't know any more of where that has gone, but just be aware that that's out there in the talk as well. I think at the end of the day here, and this will be my last point, is we're safe, and we'll be able to move forward, and hopefully 2021 is not full of surprises like 2020 has had been as well. Okay, so with that, I'm going to transition back into the normal scheduled program, and if you do have questions or concerns, you can always stay on the Google Meet. We can talk about that, or send me an email or a message. Okay, so transitioning. I've in the past have talked about the internal assessment and how I would like you to resubmit it. And deciding I would like you to resubmit it. I want you to go back and look at what kind of citations that you have, or maybe not have citations, and just add more citation to your finished product. I'm not asking you to revise it because you've already been given a score, but we want to make sure we can shore up the citations, because we are planning with the idea of an IB exam is going to happen in May, but if not, then this internal assessment becomes the big one, deciding factor. And so we want to make sure that we have all our stuff in the row here, stuff in order, I should say. So resubmit it onto the IB prep site that I created. And if you're having troubles with that, please let me know. Okay. So yesterday we were looking at the sources activity, and you were to complete it. And we were looking to see how Adolf Hitler was able to establish and consolidate his power. And I think from that sources activity, you should get a good sense that he's able to do that through a number of means. And each of the sources was kind of directing you at that. And so you can make a claim Hitler is able to establish and consolidate power in Germany through individual effort, election process, legislative procedures, eliminate opposition, and get control of the military. And then each of those sources kind of really address it. And you want to pull out the specificalities in each of the sources that show how he is establishing and consolidating his power. Again, like yesterday, where the soldiers are taking an oath to Adolf Hitler, allows him to consolidate his control over the military. Outside information that could have probably be applicable here too is, you're looking at things like the propaganda, the effective use of mass media, him gaining the chancellorship because of outplaying his opponents, the mistakes by the ruling elite, the Reichstag fire of 33 that he's going to take advantage of. But none of the documents really speak of that. And then the Night of the Long Knives, where he is purging his opponents within the Nazi Party, but then his other opponents that may have criticized him up to the point of 1933 and 34 as well. And then you just go back to the original claim that how he established his control and consolidation. All right. So if you do not have that done, let's be sure, get that done. I think technically that was the only assignment that we had so far this week. So that was only one assignment. So you weren't really overtaxed that way. Now, as I said in my update, that I want us to focus on how Hitler is re-engineering German society. I use that word re-engineer because realistically, he is taking down the known structure and recreating it. And that's what authoritarians are doing. They're recreating it in what they view is the important foundation blocks of their society. All right. And that's where this activity is going to come into play here. Hitler's domestic and foreign policies activities. And I'll explain that in a moment here. But to kind of get us in this idea of he's re-engineering society, I do have a video clip here that I do want for us to watch. And I think it does a really good job of zeroing in on specifically how he views youth in Germany as well as women in Germany. Now, as we watch this, as always, I encourage you to think about some kind of takeaways and some feedbacks that you might have, some things that kind of cause you to go, about Adolf Hitler, and we can discuss it at that point. I do want to throw a little qualifier out there that some of the language and maybe imagery might be a little graphic, but this goes along with how Adolf Hitler is beginning to re-engineer and change Germany in his image. All right. We will have this for about 10 minutes.
Peter Hartmann was proud to be a German boy. And so he joined the Hitler Youth. By 1936, all children over 10 were required to join, whether they were willing or not. The many thousands of new members were to be presented to Hitler as a gift for his 48th birthday. If you were a 10-year-old boy in Germany, you too might have wanted to join after watching films like this.
Sag Mutter. Ach, wir haben abgekocht, geturnt und geschwommen und gesungen. Ein Lied haben die gesungen, sag ich dir. Und wie ging das noch? Das habe ich doch vergessen. Unsere Warte mal, jetzt habe ich. Unsere Fahne flattert uns voran.
For our field exercises, our squad has to find the other squad through military reconnaissance. Once the enemy squad is found, there are fistfights. This exercise is supposed to teach us that comradeship, as they call it, is formed in battle.
We are dreadfully worried. The boys won't listen to us anymore. When my wife insisted that our oldest obey, he drew his dagger and assaulted her. He shouted, "I belong to the Führer first. The family comes second." Within 2 years, nearly 8 million children had taken the Hitler Youth Oath of Allegiance. I swear to devote myself to Adolf Hitler.
I am willing and ready to give up my life. So help me God.
In the end, many of them would.
You're watching Third Reich, The Rise. For more on World War II, go to History.com.
It was 1937. An amateur filmmaker, Walter Langer, celebrated his wedding by making this short film. Langer and his bride were exactly the kind of Germans Hitler wanted more of. Industrious, politically enthusiastic, and most importantly, Aryan. Women like Mrs. Langer were encouraged by the Reich to have as many children as possible. Because if the Third Reich was going to achieve its goals, it didn't just need better Germans, it needed more of them.
In the eyes of our beloved leader, the mother is the most important person in the nation. We are Germany's hope in the future. And it is our duty to breed and rear the new generation of sons and daughters.
This female division of the Hitler Youth was filmed hiking outside Munich in 1937. Participation was mandatory for these girls, who were required to document that they were Aryan and free of hereditary disease.
Dear Mother and Father, in our camp there are 48 girls. Near us is a boys' camp. We see the boys very often and mend their clothing as we spend the evenings with them. A funny thing, of these 48 girls, 35 are pregnant. And still funnier, I'm one of the 35.
Upon learning of her daughter's pregnancy, one girl's horrified mother rushed to the camp to investigate and discipline her daughter. The 16-year-old replied hotly that if her mother did not go home and leave her alone, she would report her to the camp leader, who would in turn report the mother to the Gestapo, who would then take action against her. for sabotaging German motherhood.
All right. That's a lot in that little 10-minute clip here. Perhaps again, hit a lot of the different senses and such. But what kind of reactions do you have about how Adolf Hitler is going about re-engineering German society in regards to the youth and women? Either unmute or put in the chat your thoughts. Or any type of reactions. Okay, so two good points brought up in the chat here. Brainwashing. There definitely is a lot of we'll call the brainwashing going on, and you can see that he's targeting the youth, very moldable, and it's extraordinary when one thinks that Hitler is most important and then family is second, and then this idea of what women need to do. And what women were turned into, in order for him to really engage or to get his master plan in action, his Stufenplan, which in regards to war, he's going to need more kids. And this is where the role of women is going to greatly be changed. The dial is going to be turned back here. So now, when we talk about destructiveness after the war and Hitler's no longer on the scene, those young people, some of them became adults, fought, died for the Third Reich, or some of them are still young enough where they're going to need again, maybe lack of better words, they're going to need to be deprogrammed after the war. So that's what we talk about destructiveness. Okay. Again, if you have other thoughts, feel free to unmic at any point and put them into the chat as well. But I want to switch gears here to Gilmore, talk about him re-engineering German society, and we'll simply call that Gleichschaltung, which is coordinated effort. Your assignment, you can see here, I've had this one open for a little while, and I've added some new things to it yesterday and even this morning. So if you had downloaded earlier, just bear in mind that there is another reading, Hitler and Nazi Germany reading, that I've uploaded into it. And then I actually uploaded a new authoritarian graphic organizer. So let's take a moment. Please open up that graphic organizer, and it's going to look something like this. And the important thing here is when we do an activity like this, and we're going to do one for Hitler, we'll do one for Stalin, and we'll do one for Mao as well, depending on which trimester you are in, 3.1 or 3.2. We'll get to Mao as well. And any of these topics that appear on this graphic organizer, becomes potential prompts for the history exam. So it's very important that, you know, we gain some understanding of which each of these topics are, so then we can perhaps do a little comparison of other authoritarians. So when we look at activities, this is definitely what I'll consider very important activity that's going to help us with, one, that authoritarian assessment at the end of this trimester, but then also help us with preparation for the IB history exam. So we've got the why there. It also help us determine how total of a totalitarian Adolf Hitler is, because we will be able to assess how far control he has in certain areas. So you see how this starts off with, it says authoritarian regime and left and right wing. Well, authoritarian, we know this one is Adolf Hitler, so I would put Adolf Hitler in there. When it comes to region, we know it's Germany. Well, we know he had led Germany, but when we talk about region, Europe. IB likes to categorize things in regions, and so that's why I have that there. Region, it is Europe. In parentheses, you can say Germany, but we're looking at Europe. In terms of left and right wing, he is a fascist leader. The Nazi Party is a fascist party, so that means they are right-leaning. So Hitler, Europe, right wing would be appropriate. You are looking for some specificalities, some components of various policies, and then you're looking for successes and failures to those policies. Now, you do not necessarily have to get a complete picture here or get deeply in depth here. I know some of you will, and because that's your mode of operation. But you want to get enough information where you can properly assess the degree of success and failure he has in these areas. So when we look at economics, any good authoritarian is trying to create self-sufficiency, autarky. So you're going to look at what kind of policies that he has put together to help create self-sufficiency in Germany. Social policies, it's always a confusing one in IB, but I've broken that down into various components, and each of these components can easily be a test question. Youth, which includes education, so we've got a little bit of an idea of the youth from just that little video clip here. Women, same thing. Religion, I'll come back to that one. Minorities, it's more than just Jews in Germany. There are other groups that he would like to go after, but Jews is the big scapegoat. Culture and propaganda, we're looking at arts, mass media, and press. And foreign policy, we're looking at how is he using his foreign policy to expand his power or consolidate his power or maintain his power. At the end of the day, it's about power. Okay? And so going back and looking at religion. And again, please stop me if you have questions or concerns. So when we look at his goals, his objective with religion, obviously he's going to want to try to find a way to control it. Religion for authoritarians, whether it's Hitler, Stalin, Fidel Castro, Mao, Benito Mussolini, Juan Perón, whoever they are, they're going to try to find a way to somehow influence, control it, or use it to their advantage. And Hitler, he wanted to restrict the church to primarily spiritual role and get out of politics. So you can work on what they would sometimes say the soul, but Hitler's saying it has no business in politics. He's going to take it to some other levels as well, like with the Catholic Church. He's going to sign an agreement with the Vatican, and the Vatican will recognize the Nazis' regime, and the Nazis will not interfere with the affairs of the Catholic Church. That's going to be a potential black eye for the Catholic Church here, and Pope Pius during, I believe it's Pope Pius, during World War II. The Protestant Church, I have down here where it says it's easier to influence. And what I mean by that is there's a number of Protestant religions out there or sects out there. You got the Lutheran, you got the Methodists, you got the Baptists, Calvinists or Presbyterians out there. So they're not as unified perhaps as like one Catholic church. And so it might be a little bit easier to kind of influence. And so you have some specificalities down here as well with the People's Church and the Reichschurch. These are just ways that he's trying to control and influence the Protestant faith. And of course, the restrictions given to Judaism here as well. And I've got the event Kristallnacht here. It's where the Jewish synagogues are under attack during the night of the night of broken glass, as it's sometimes referred to as. So when we look at his successes and failures, he's not completely successful here. He does not have total alignment of the church to go along with the Nazi regimes. And so there had been a compromise that occurred. Attendance grew during his regime, one would say, especially with the war. And the church does remain as an obstacle to his full totalitarian authoritarian state. Some of these church leaders will speak out in regards to some of his programs about euthanasia or even going after Jews and opponents. So you can't give him a completeness. Now, I do this example with you because this one in the past students have had a hard time with. And so that's why I'm giving you as the example. All right. Any questions about this? You can see I have this in a graphic organizer format. I'm going to give you the liberty where you can create this in any format that you want. As long as you can show, here's the policy, here's some specificality about it, the information, you know, in terms of how he implements it and why he's implementing it, and then the success. So you could have it in a note form, you can have it in Google Slides. I even encourage you that perhaps maybe you want to work with a historical buddy on this, you know, recreate this maybe as a Google Doc, and you can share it that way with each other. You just got to maintain some distancing here. This is ultimately going to be due Monday, so we've got some time to work on it. And with that being said, I'm going to give you tomorrow to work on it, and so we will not have a live Google Meet tomorrow. You should focus on this to get it done for Monday. And then on Monday, we will manipulate this a little bit, or use it, I shouldn't say manipulate, but use this to help us assess the totalitarianness of his regime. All right. So if you do have questions, you can stay on the Google Meet. If not, you can exit and have a fantastic day.